Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Dr. Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Dr. Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner, share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Dr. Tina.
Hello, Widowhood. What if you could have 15 steps on how to deal with grief for widowers? What if widowers had an action plan on how to manage their grief? This conversation today with Herb is going to provide you exactly that. And Herb is willing to share this with you for free. Herb is a widower. He knows how hard this journey is. And in fact, he's going to share a book that he's written about the widower's journey that he invested 7 years of research. There's more details. I want you to hear it all. Let's get into this conversation now. Hello, Herb. Welcome to the Widowhood.
Well, thank you, and congratulations on your many successes.
Oh, wow. Thank you. When you think of welcome to the widowhood, what are your thoughts that come to mind?
When I
hear welcome to the widowhood,
I like encouraging men who need it, and your work is very, very good and goes in that direction. So I'm happy to participate and contribute in any way I can.
Oh, thank you so much. And I especially want to thank you for participating in this holiday mini-series, Voices of Widowhood Healing Through the Holidays. And I am especially glad that we can have this conversation focusing more on our widower and giving them a conversation about them. As we go into this conversation, can you share what brought you into this work of serving men and widowers?
Well, the year was 2008. And my wife passed away after surviving pancreatic cancer for 39 months. She was she was 52 years old. So I was a banker living in San Antonio, Texas. And one of my staff members came up to me, a young girl, and she said, "The entire floor misses your laughter."
Oh, wow.
And then I realized for the first time that I wasn't in very good shape. So I decided to seek help. And I went to my church, and I went to the VA because I'm a disabled veteran. And I went to Barnes & Noble. And I walked into Barnes & Noble and I asked the young man behind the counter, "What do you have for a new widower?" He looked on his search engine, and then he looked up at me and he said, "Mister, I don't have a thing for you." So then we went to the bookcase just to be sure that there wasn't a title that was there that he missed. And we found 15 books, each of them written for widows and not one written for men. And I knew before I left that Barnes & Noble store that I was about to quit my job. And after 38 years in banking, and I had a very high post, I walked away from it and I rededicated my life to helping widowed men.
Wow.
And then what I needed to do is, I didn't know anything about widowed men. I'm a new one myself. So I found 40 widowed men and I asked them for permission to track their lives. And I did so for 7 years. Now, most books are written for the immediate impact of becoming a widow. But I wanted to know both the long and short-term impact. That's why I went 7 years. And my volunteer men used to tease me, saying, "Are you ever going to publish this book?" Yes. So I published it, and it was released in 2017, and it's still a hot book on Amazon.com. And
what is your book called? What is the title?
The Widower's Journey.
Literally 7 years journey, like for real. Yes.
And you see the pictures of the 40 men in here and their volunteer contribution. And it's the best thing that I've ever done. That's what I claim. So after that, I created the Widowers Support Network, which is a website and also a Facebook page. But the Facebook page is only for men.
Say it again. It's only for who?
For men, not women. I don't let women on it. I created one Facebook page and all I was getting were women. So I had to create a second one. And this time I started screening everybody who I admitted onto it. And today it has about 3,000 men living in 44 countries on it. And it's a terrific resource for widowed men. And they're of all ages. They're even in their 20s, some men who are widowed, where the wife maybe lost a baby and died in childbirth. One woman died in a motorcycle accident. One woman was murdered. There's all the different circumstances. And when men realize that they're not being listened to by women, they will open up. And then they help each other, and they continue to do it to this day.
I want to pause right there, and I just want to interject. Men need a space to themselves. There is not an insult to say they're just not being listened to by women. There's a sense of being vulnerable that men can have in company with each other. Can you elaborate? Say a man is thinking about joining a support group or connecting, and right now they've been told, I'm supposed to hold back my tears. All that emotion stuff isn't for me. Can you share the benefit of what a man would gain from participating in community with other men?
Absolutely. I also have a podcast, and on my podcast number 23, I interviewed 4 men simultaneously, one from Australia, one from Scotland, one from England, and one from India. And what we talked about was the cultural differences between how their nations treat widowed men and how the US of A treats widowed men. America pales by comparison. We do not sensitize our children to a man's grief. But the girls are, cascades of flowers are cast upon women, and they have their girlfriends, but the men don't. And one problem that widowed men have is they don't make new friends easily. So if they're retired, let's say, they lost their coworkers in their life, they lost their customers in their life, if their wife is now gone, and maybe the children have married and moved out. So now they're alone, and they don't make friends easily. They don't even make neighbors across the street. They don't even go over and shake their hand. It's just the way American men are. And they feel that anything less than that, it demonstrates a weakness in their character. And it's not so. So what we do, and I hear from my men every week about how pleased they are to be in this group, because the men have learned the culture of the group, and it is to give of myself to help somebody else. So if a man posts a question, like today, there was a man who posted a question about dating sites. And does that mean that I didn't love my wife? Or am I free to date somebody new? They're always second guessing themselves. And then worst of all, men make bad decisions. They frequently will date or marry the first girl that they date. They fall heads over heel in love because they got some attention. And they need to be a little bit more discriminating with women, because some women have ulterior motives. I was at a church speaking one night, and I talked about predator women. And a man came out of the audience, and there's predator men too, don't get me wrong.
No, this is the men version. We're good with this.
So a man came out of the audience and gave me his phone number, and he said, call me. So I called him a couple of days later, and he said, I want to contribute to your book, My Story, because I fell prey to a predator woman, where the woman spent $1.2 million from his retirement fund in 2 years. It was gone. So she set him up, and then she took advantage of him. Now, there's good marriages, but over 50% of the widowed men will end up being married and divorced. That's a high number.
It is.
So that's why I encourage men, by all means, date lots of different women. Don't be in a rush, because what you don't know is what you don't know. You don't know. And the same thing goes for ladies to men, but we're not 18-year-old kids anymore.
Oh gosh, no.
You know,
In that same question, the idea people are in the holidays, they're wanting to date, they don't want to be home alone. What are some challenges or some guidance you can give for someone if they're a widower and they're looking to date during this holiday season?
well, first of all, I have remarried and I used eHarmony as a dating site and it worked great for me. But the thing is, you have to be honest about yourself. You can't cover up, little imperfections in your background. Now, to give you an example, when I was using eHarmony, I was 60 years old. And one of the women who showed interest in me, surprisingly, was a 48-year-old beautiful woman. And I asked her one day on the phone, I said, tell me, why would a 48-year-old attractive woman be interested in a 60-year-old man? And she said, well, I'm not really 48. So I ended that conversation. Because if she's willing to lie about her age on her application, she's willing to do whatever.
Do you think when men are dating or after being a widow, it impacts their self-esteem or their confidence?
Absolutely. And I will tell you, my self-esteem suffered. I didn't think I was marketable. I didn't think, who would want me? I'm a banker. Those are boring people. And it took a while for me to recover from that.
And how did you do that?
Well, first of all, you get off the couch. Men will close the drapes and they hate weekends because they're not out somewhere and they're not being forced to interact with other people. So they stay home on weekends and they close the curtains and they eat TV dinners and the house gets to be in a disarray. They have to get off the couch. They need to volunteer. That's what I recommend. And I don't care if it's your church. I don't care if it's a little league baseball team. I don't care if it's the Knights of Columbus or the Lions Club or Rotary Club, but get out with people because that's where recovery can be found the quickest. They also need to take care of many other things, and it can get confusing and it can be overwhelming. And men think, well, I'll never recover, from my grief. Other people don't understand me. They're not any different. And in the book, The Grieving Brain, which you and I had spoken about, details that people who are grieving can take a year or 2 or 3 or even more to recover. It all depends on the health condition of the human brain. And this is new science. This is a new discovery. And sometimes people get insensitive and they'll say things like, how come he's not over it yet? It's been 6 months. How come he hasn't come to visit us, or called or inquired or did anything? It's been a year, but maybe he's not capable. And then men get frustrated because they haven't recovered. And that just compounds the problem. The fact is that once the human brain recovers, then the person is able to recover. But it's not going to happen by itself. You need to contribute. So I suggest, I recognized this some time ago, I created a document which is a how to recovery plan. And I'll make this available to your viewers if they just write me at my email address. And there's 15 steps that I suggest that people take. And
Herb, can you share your email address? I know it'll be in the show notes, but can you share your email address, please?
Sure. It's herb@thewidowersjourney.com.
Okay, so they could get the plan from you. What about the book? Would they be able to contact you to order the book too?
Yes, they could if they want an autographed copy, or they can go right to Amazon.com and they can find it there as well. I'm proud to say that it receives 4.5 stars out of 5 on Amazon, and there's a whole load of endorsements so people can see what other people think about it. Going back to your holidays, they're hard, they're painful, people are lonely, and that's why suicides always increase every year at Christmas. It's important that people be out and about just to protect their health. And in my plan that I created, grief recovery rule number 3, take care of your health. Now, men don't do that very well because it's the wives that send the husbands to the doctors, and the men will feel an ache or pain and they'll just try to ignore it. Don't do that. It could cost you your life, and it's not necessary, and it just adds more grief to your other family members. So take care of your health. Have a doctor tell you you're okay. Don't assume you're okay.
There's another part to your plan. You talked about that earlier. Can you elaborate on that too, please?
Which part did you like?
No. This, after going through the plan, the other spreadsheet that you would go.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, I will also make this available. This is my recovery plan, and there's 4 columns to it. So I encourage men to fill out, even if it's just a couple things, just to test the waters. In the first column, you'll fill in what challenge are you facing? Loneliness, self-esteem, your health, your regrets maybe that you might have about your relationship with your now deceased wife, whatever the challenge is, steps to be taken. What steps do you need to take to solve that challenge? The third line is the desired outcome. How will you overpower the challenge that you're facing? And then the target date that you want to achieve it by. Now, I will send you the template for this, and then you can make as many copies as you want. And if you like, I'll even entertain a phone call or whatever to help coach you through it.
Oh, wow. You also mentioned about a podcast. Can you share the name of your podcast, where they can find it, how often it comes out?
Sure. Well, you can go to the Widowers Support Network on the website, and then it has the podcast listed under services. And there's 48 episodes that are up. And I've interviewed authors, and I've interviewed men, of course, widowed men. I've interviewed sociologists and psychologists, and you name it. So it too is very well received, and it's got a lot of attention from folks.
Thank you. One of the things that you talked about is about being active. If someone has been in the house for a while, they've closed the curtains, they've gone to work, and they just come home, they've not been engaged in the world, what are some soft steps in becoming active again that you could recommend for them?
Well, it all depends on one's personal likes and dislikes. You can start with church. Every church I know is looking for volunteers. And whether it's collecting the donations that week, or if it's maybe passing out brochures, or maybe assisting the clergy with the service that's being performed, or maybe it's even helping with the annual lawn fete that the church is hosting to raise money. But you can start with the church, and like I said, you can join the Lions, you can join the Kiwanis Club, you can join the Knights of Columbus. There's all sorts of organizations. You can join a hospice. Or what's one man did, a man was a piano player, and he volunteered his hours. He played the piano in the hospital that his wife passed in, and he did that in memory of her. So you can pick your wife's favorite interest. Maybe it's the flower club, or maybe it's a ladies auxiliary of some type, and donate your hours to them in name of your wife.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. So I've started to go out. I'm engaged in the world. And now I'm starting to make these expectations. I've got the plan. I'm making all this list. Do I get too enthusiastic? How do I balance that to make sure that I'm not, creating unrealistic expectations for myself?
Well, I think you'll know if you get overwhelmed, but you can always call me and I'll coach you.
Okay. Okay.
I've done a lot of that. I do it every week for different folks, and I'm happy to do it. And there's no charge for that.
Okay.
There's no charge.
When you look at what you started, this book, A 7-Year Journey, what were some of the benefits for you personally in going through this with the 40 men and watching them?
I'm a pretty gregarious gentleman, and I knew that I wasn't anymore after my wife, and it hit me pretty hard. And then when my colleagues started to notice, I realized I better get serious about my recovery, and that's what prompted me to look into it. Then writing the book was therapeutic for me. Establishing the Widowers Support Network was very therapeutic for me. I contributed articles every week Plus, I recruited about another 50 different writers who contributed articles on a rotation basis. And right now, today, on the Widower Support Network, there's approximately 600 or 700 articles covering a wide range of topics that are available for any man who's a member of that group anytime.
Wow.
And there's a search engine, so you can pick the topic: dating or cooking or loneliness or whatever it is, and it will sort them out for you and deliver you the articles that pertain to that.
That is more than just a couple of men getting together chatting. This is a real resource that you've created.
Oh, yes. Now, and I should tell you that I sold my resource to another gentleman about within the last year, but I'm still involved. I'm still contributing. And I sold it after 17 years of building this. I needed to do it because I have to get some other things done in my life, in this life. I have to get some things done. So I agreed to sell it and I agreed to contribute to it. But the new gentleman who owns it, and Chris Bentley, he has gone even further in elaborating the different services that he offered. Last week I participated in a call that he had. He services both widowed men and women. And he brought them all together in a conference call. And then we broke up into two groups, men and women. And the men, which I participated in, had a very powerful, tearful session for about an hour. He has a newsletter. I encourage you to look at the Widowers Support Network, and you will be very, very impressed. And I'm proud to be the one who started it.
Wow.
And I found a good person to take it from me.
That is beautiful. A few more questions. I know the term widower is what's used, but what if someone was a domestic partner, they were not married, or they had been living with a fiance? Are they welcome to your group, same-sex relationships, and people that are grieving the loss of a partner? Does it just have to be somebody that was married?
Absolutely. They are welcome. We even have some gay couples.
Okay.
And yesterday, a gentleman actually registered a complaint that he, due to my actions that date back about a year ago, but he offered them up verbally yesterday. And it was that I asked him for a copy of his wife's death certificate. And he thought that was an intrusion. But then about 20 men, maybe 25, commented, "No, I'm glad Herb does that. He sorts through. He protects our audience, because a lot of evildoers would love to have access to my database and my membership roster. So I protect them by insisting that they be widowed."
And our group does the same. We do, at least at this point, technology, you could just send us a link and we can go to that and see. But you are right. There are people that want to do misdoings to people in this group because they see you as prey, you're vulnerable, you're in a compromised mental state, and
Right.
people can prey upon that. So that is good that you take that extra step, because it is important.
Right. You know what's interesting is I mentioned earlier that my membership is from the 20s to like maybe the 80s. When they post a question for the other members to read and hopefully contribute an answer, they never ask the age. They never know, is the man who's asking the question, is he 70 or is he 30? I have never seen a man ask the age. It's just that there's a common thread throughout all of them. They're widowed.
And that's
enough.
Yes.
That's enough.
What are some overarching tips that you think about grief, holiday, and being a widower?
We have music that gets some people through. The holidays. The holidays are tough, and they come right after another. You know, the Thanksgiving, the Christmas, the New Year's, and then the Valentine's Day. It can be very, very hard. I would just tell the people, pray over it. I'm a man of faith, so I will not apologize for being that. Listen to your heart. Try to be with others and be patient with others if they miscue or if they say something that's insensitive, because Americans we don't know what we're doing when we're talking to a widower. I had a woman come up to me many months after my wife died, and she said, I really wanted to call you, but I didn't want to bother you. And I said, I wish you would have, because they use it as an excuse. I don't know what to say, so I won't call. And that happens more times than not.
That is a very good point. And do you think people are more concerned about how they feel in supporting you than making the focus about the person that is grieving?
Absolutely. I had a woman my first day back to work, which was like 10 days after my wife died. And a vice president walked up to me and she started asking me all these questions. And then she said, I want to introduce you to my aunt. And I said, that's not going to happen. Now, maybe she was being supportive, or she thought she was being supportive because she knew that I have a loss and I have shoes to fill with hopefully a new woman in my life. But I took it to be offensive. And people don't know what to say. They really don't. So they don't talk. They would rather console a woman than a man any day. And they're so afraid if men start to cry. Now, what am I going to do? I don't have any handkerchiefs or tissues. In fact, I will tell you the story. My first day back at work, I'm in my office and I'm crying. The head of the human resource department walked into my office. He saw me at my desk crying. He turned around and walked right back out. Closed the door behind him.
If he had a redo, what would you recommend he could have done?
He should have at least offered me a Kleenex. He should have come in, sat down, and closed the door behind him, and offered his consoling me, but his sympathies. But he didn't know what to say. The head of human resources, and he just walked out.
What are some things people can say?
They can say, I'm very sorry, and I'll hold you and your wife and your family in my prayers. And if there's anything that I can do, I want you to lean on me and offer your services, even if you know he'll never take it. Offer support and say anything you need. Like I do that all the time. And I offer myself. I have a friend of mine right now who's dying and he needs to go to the doctor often. And I offered to drive him. And it may be something small. It may just be someone that they can call in the middle of the night. I needed somebody when my wife was dying, and I went out to the parking lot in the hospital, and I called a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in 15 years, but I knew he lost his wife. And at 3:00 in the morning, I called him, and he consoled me. So you don't know what the person's going to need, but don't withhold your services. Offer it. Someday you're going to need that.
Yes. Herb, this has been a really insightful conversation. Is there anything else you feel like that we should have talked about that we didn't mention that would be helpful for the gentleman?
Well, I would like to stress keeping your health in check. 65% of newly widowed men will have a life-threatening illness within 12 months. 65%. And it takes effort to be healthy, especially us older gentlemen. Last week, I went to 5 different doctors. One was a dermatologist and one was a dentist. The other one was a neurologist, and the other one was a cardiac doctor. It takes effort to be healthy. And, watch your diet and, watch the substance abuse and the alcohol, because it's not the answer. Give your grief to God is what I like to do. And He will be there for you every single time.
What does it look like to give your grief to God? I hear the term, but what is the action of that? For someone that's listening and they're trying to say, how do I do that?
You just have your prayerful conversation with the Almighty, okay, and offer, just say, I'm not gonna search for answers. I'm waiting for them to come to me from the Almighty. Okay. And you're gonna do your best to take care of your children, to take care of your job, your responsibility, so you don't lose it, so you can still pay the mortgage and not lose your house. And that happens a lot. That happens a real lot. Cars can be repossessed when people start losing their jobs, or they can't focus. So that's why you have to go see a psychologist or a psychiatric ward or something. And you can get through this. You can. And I've seen it time and time again where men feel that there's no hope for their situation, that they're unique. And then 6 months later, oh, well, I guess I'm okay. And I would encourage men to journal. Now, if you don't know what journaling is write your thoughts down on a book with blank pages, and then every day, just even if it's one sentence, something that you accomplished that day, something that maybe upset you that day, and do it every day. And then 30, 60, 90 days, look back at the beginning and see how far you've come. It can be done. Millions of men have done it before. Millions. Since the beginning of time, in their own way, they have recovered in the past. And then your audience can do it too. And if I have to help them, I will.
Thank you, Herb. I've asked you a lot of questions, and I know you're a podcaster. I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask me a question or two.
Okay. You want me to ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay. So you were in the military, you're still in the military?
Retired Army CW2 logistician.
Okay. So if you were to be introduced to a widowed man, would you hesitate to date a widowed man, or would you prefer a divorced man?
I am remarried already.
Okay. Well, then you better not then.
But so I'm going to say, before I remarried, when I was dating, I actually had the mindset that it would have been easier to date another widower because they would have some sense of understanding of the emotional triggers, what it's like to always love somebody else, but be open to loving someone new. So I tried that. It just didn't work out. But my current husband is a divorcee. But I was more concerned about someone. I am 59, about to be 60. I know you're older.
No, you're not. No.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
So I wasn't a spring chicken when I was getting married the second time. I never thought about being in this dating world. So I had a lot of questions about maturity, communication skills, just what I saw as this second version of a partner. I love my late husband today. So I knew my expectations of someone I was going to share life with needed to, I will say this, I did want somebody that had been married before, because if you've not been married at this age, I felt like that was going to be hard to learn how to share your life with someone. Whether it was a divorce or they passed, I thought having marital experience was going to be necessary.
Okay. I happen to agree with you that widowed men, at least in my group, I would encourage women to make themselves available to my audience because they loved their deceased wife and they're capable of that love. And some men question whether or not their love is called into question because they're fallen in love with a second woman. The human heart is able to love more than once.
Yes.
So I know that if I ever made my mailing list available, I would get a fortune in bids because I have 3,000 widowed men. I mean, I won't do it. I won't sell the list.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to say something to our listeners, and then I'm going to allow you to close out this conversation.
Okay, great.
Thank you for joining us today. I am so sorry for the person that is no longer in your life that has driven you to this conversation, but I know the words that Herb shared today are going to be helpful. And maybe you know a widower that is struggling or that feels like they're alone, and this conversation would be helpful. I encourage you to share this podcast with them. Maybe that's the way that you show up for them the very first time, saying, I see you, this conversation resonated with me, and I want to share it with you.
Very good. Tina, you are an extraordinary woman who's doing extraordinary deeds that should be admired and applauded. So congratulations on that. I would tell the men, you're not so unique. You can be happy. You can find joy again in your life. Write me. Let me send you my 15 steps of recovery. I will take a phone call from your followers if they wish to talk to me, but write me first, herb@thewidowersjourney.com. And I will leave you with this thought. Celebrate your wife's life by living yours.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then, visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.